In the news this week, the House of Lords drops its bid to impose same-sex marriage on Northern Ireland, compulsory sex education will include lessons on gay relationships, and a Tavistock governor resigns over the whitewashing of concerns about poor practice at its gender clinic. Hello. A bid to impose same-sex marriage on Northern Ireland has been dropped in the House of Lords. Following impassioned speeches from a number of peers, Lord Hayward's proposed amendment to the Civil Partnerships Bill was withdrawn. Lord McRae asserted that God's word has authority over what marriage truly means.
I make no apology for stating that I genuinely believe with all my heart and with deep conviction that in the scriptures of holy truth that it is clearly points that marriage is a covenant that is entered into by one man and one woman.
Crossbench peer Lord Kilclooney stressed the importance of keeping marriage in Northern Ireland as a devolved issue.
It is a nonsense to suggest that this is simply a human rights issue. Marriage is a devolved issue for Northern Ireland as it is for Scotland. It is not a question of the national parliament imposing its will on a devolved state. And we must be careful to maintain the right of devolution, which I strongly support.
The Christian Institute's Deputy Director for Communications, Kieran Kelly, welcomed the outcome of the debate.
This is good news, and it's a real answer to prayer that this latest attempt to force same-sex marriage on Northern Ireland has failed. We do need to be a little bit cautious though. Lord Hayward has said that he intends to come back at some point in the future, and so we must continue to pray that this doesn't happen. Redefining marriage is highly controversial, and it's not right to impose it on the people and politicians of Northern Ireland.
The government has announced it's proceeding with plans to include teaching on transgenderism and homosexual relationships in new relationships education lessons. Education Secretary Damien Hinds told MPs that the rights of parents to remove their children from such classes would be weakened. Currently, children under the age of 18 may be removed at their parents' wishes, but this has now been lowered to 15. Head teachers will also have the power to override parents. Sir Edward Lee challenged Mr Hinds over the change.
Religious people, indeed non-religious people, have their own justifiable formal belief about the best way to teach sex education. All previous Conservative governments, therefore, have given an untrammeled right to parents to remove their children from sex education. But here, in certain circumstances, that right is being transferred to the head teacher, a fundamental shift of power to the state.
In a Westminster Hall debate, Fiona Bruce MP also spoke out after a petition signed by more than 100,000 parents expressed serious concern at the plans.
This may be expressed to be in exceptional circumstances, but that is not defined. And the very fact that the caveat exists is a breach in the current parental right to withdraw, which many is a breach too far.
Researchers have called for a crackdown on cannabis use after the drug was linked to a number of murders by British teenagers. Their call comes following the conviction of 16-year-old Aaron Campbell for the murder of 6-year-old Alicia MacPhail last July. It emerged during the trial that Aaron was a cannabis user who later told police that he was really stoned. This is the most recent in a series of high-profile killings by young cannabis users. Lobbyists for cannabis are pressuring the government to legalise the potent drug, but anti-cannabis campaigner Ross Granger said, "We're dealing with the human mind, this thing we barely understand, and yet we're thinking of legalising a drug that affects it in very powerful ways that we don't fully grasp." And finally, a governor at the NHS Trust running a gender identity clinic for children has resigned in protest over a whitewash review process. Marcus Evans, a consultant psychologist for more than 30 years, was angered by the Tavistock and Portman NHS Trust dismissal of a report raising serious ethical concerns about its practices. The report, which said children were making life-changing decisions with inadequate examination and consent, was compiled by Dr. David Bell. The Trust conducted an internal investigation, but ignored Bell's criticism and instead accused him of having no expertise in this field, despite being one of the most respected staff members at the Trust. In a letter to the Sunday Times, 16 academics and clinicians hit out at the Trust. We are disappointed that the Trust has responded by apparently attempting to discredit Bell rather than addressing the serious problems raised by this report. We call on the Tavistock and Portman Trust to encourage scientific investigation and ethical debate on this complex issue. The health of thousands of children is at stake. Well, that's all for this week. For more information and regular updates on all of our stories, plus much more, visit our website at christian.org.uk. Until next time, goodbye.